Are you looking for actionable tips on how to improve your public speaking skills and make a genuine impact? Like ditch the public speaking anxiety, really amp up your presence. Join us as Adriana Baer explores the art of powerful communication, offering tips to tailor your message and connect confidently with your audience on the Scenic Route Podcast. Hi, and welcome to the Scenic Route Podcast, where we believe in embracing life's journey with purpose, curiosity, and a bit of potty humor. I'm Jen, a sociologist, someone's uncool mom, and I'm always looking out for that perfect slice of gluten-free rhubarb pie. Every week, I get the joy of sitting down with dreamers and doers who dare to take the road less traveled in pursuit of their own magic. Together, we dive into the inspiring stories of soulful entrepreneurs and visionary leaders who boldly share their beliefs, lessons, and fuck-ups. Excited? So am I. You're exactly where you're meant to be. And now, let's take this conversation off the beaten track. Adriana Baer is a public speaking coach whose mission is to help clients claim their stage, radiate confidence and charisma, propel their career, and increase their impact. With over 20 years as a professional theater director and arts leader, Adriana brings a unique perspective and a practical and actionable set of tools to her coaching. In addition to her private coaching practice, she has worked and lectured at dozens of theaters, colleges, and universities nationwide. Adriana holds a Bachelor of Arts from Sarah Lawrence College and a Master of Fine Arts in Directing from Columbia University. She offers courses and coaching through her company, Claim Center Stage. Adriana, welcome to the Scenic Route Podcast.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So today we're talking about speech and how we communicate, how we talk. How did this topic find you, Adriana?
Well, I actually was a kid who wanted to be an actor when I grew up. So I started from, elementary school, primary school, performing on stage. And that kind of journey is what eventually led me to becoming a speaking coach. But between the world of being an actor and where I am now was a long time as a professional theater director. And so my background is really in helping people tell their stories authentically and truthfully in front of other people. So that is the world that's how I approach speaking.
In your experience, when you're working with people of all sorts and backgrounds, what are the common obstacles or perceived obstacles that people have or claim to have that you hear every day of I don't know, I can't talk, or my voice sounds funny, or I don't know, what is it?
Yeah. I love that you say what are the perceived obstacles, because so much of this work is mindset. It's just, and it's all the same stuff, right?
Shocking.
I've listened to a bunch of your other episodes and it's all the same stuff.
I know, it's getting boring. It's mindset, or it's like breathing through and you're like, tell me something new for God's sake.
Yeah. But what's interesting is, I think with public speaking, it's gotten such a bad rap. It says there's so much statistical data and analysis that says that, somewhere between, depending on the study you're looking at, 40 to 75% of the people on the planet name public speaking as scary or scarier than death. And I think that, I know, it's shocking. And the joke that people say
is really hard for me to imagine, because
me too.
Talk.
Right. But the joke that people say, of course, is people are more afraid of giving the eulogy at the funeral than being the person being eulogized. Right. And, I think that's sort of tongue in cheek, but I think what happens with people is they get this idea early on that they're afraid of public speaking, and that becomes kind of part of their identity. And so a lot of times where this comes from is just bad experiences really early on, having to memorize some document and then perform it in front of your class when you're 13, 14, 15 years old. And you don't really have any guidance. You do it. It's kind of awful. Maybe
it's probably a text
laughs.
You don't like.
It's probably a text you don't like, right? It doesn't mean anything. How do you connect with it? And, here in the States, we have the Declaration of Independence, and everybody's supposed to memorize this document that was written, hundreds of years ago by a bunch of grumpy cis white dudes, and we're all supposed to relate to it somehow. So a lot of people get in their heads early on, oh, I'm bad at this, or I don't like this. And so one thing that leads to is this, we start having these fears that live somewhere in our psyches or in our bodies that we bring forward with us just throughout the world, or throughout our time out, out in the world, which could be anything from, every time I'm going to go talk in front of a group of people, I get butterflies in my stomach, or I start to feel nauseous, or like you said, breathe through, like I can't breathe, or I don't know how to speak properly. I don't know how to hold this microphone, right? Or it's this sort of external thing. I feel like I'm being judged, or the audience is out there and they feel scary to me. I don't know what they're thinking of me, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think my guess is for your audience, and similar for many of the people I coach who are business owners or entrepreneurs or leaders, the what of what they're going to say, the kind of content part, that's actually generally the easiest for people, because they're really familiar with, like, this is my pitch, this is my tagline, this is the thing that I do, this is who I serve. So it's really that, stuff about myself, my mindset, my body, my experience, or the audience, those people out there that people get really tripped up on. And so the first thing that I always encourage people to do, there's two things. The first is really figure out for yourself, what is it? What is the nerves? I mean, I've been performing and public speaking my entire life, and I still get nervous before I give a talk. Right.
Well, I suppose feeling a bit of nervous is quite okay and healthy, and it shows that something is something you care about and it's important to you, right?
Yeah, and adrenaline is a helpful chemical in our body that kind of makes our brains work faster, gets us going, makes us a little bit more charismatic. Yeah, so we want to figure out what that is. The other thing I encourage people to remember, and sometimes this is the first time anybody's ever thought of it this way, is that my definition of public speaking is any time you are talking to one or more other people you don't know very well.
Like, does yourself count? Like when you talk to yourself?
No.
In public space?
No. Okay. Well, I mean, I suppose no. So like
just
right
asking
now,
for a friend.
Asking for a friend. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, like right now, I would consider this to be public speaking. You and I don't know each other. We're connecting in
Very
Zoom.
true.
We know we're going to be listened to by an audience. Hello, audience. I know you're out there.
We love you.
And so when I say that, people go, oh, well, I guess I'm public speaking all the time then. Yeah. Right.
We have to meeting you're contributing
every
as
meeting.
Public speaking.
Yeah. And I don't say that to freak people out. I actually say that to just say, we've got to break down this notion that to get good at public speaking, you have to get comfortable standing on a stage in front of 1,000 people.
Yeah. We're always kind of like imagine when I'm guilty too. When I read, public speaking, my mind automatically goes to like TED Talks.
Yeah.
I'm like,
most people's do. Like, and then you think, well, what does that have to do with me? Well, a lot of people who are building their own businesses and their own brands and their own worlds, they need to be able to communicate their message to their target audience, whether that target audience is their internal team or their key stakeholders, or they're pitching something for funding. There's all these different places where opening our mouths and talking about what we care about shows up.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, regardless where you're at, whether you have your own business, whether you're in corporate, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, if you can influence the way you speak so others will listen, I mean, jackpot. I mean, if I get my kid to listen to me, to actually really listen to me, I'm like, yes.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So this is a slight tangent, but I think it's really relevant, which is,
Go ahead.
So my daughter is 7, And you told me your son's about 4. And right
Yes.
around when my daughter was 4-ish, my husband and I started realizing that he was in the theater too. So he has a theater background as well. And we started realizing that she was incredibly good at what we call in the theater playing her objective or trying her different tactics. So for example, so this is what I teach a lot of the time. And this example works really well for people's brains. I always say, okay, who is your audience and what do you want them to do? Right. So that's a really important piece of public speaking that people forget. They forget to think about the other people. So when I'm talking to an audience, I have an objective. Is my objective to educate, to incentivize, to motivate, to entertain, to galvanize, to, if I'm running for public office, I want them to vote for what is the thing that I want them to do? Mm-hmm. Then I have all these different tactics to achieve that goal. Some is storytelling. Maybe it's, giving examples. Maybe it's visuals. Mm-hmm. In the theater, when we're on stage, characters do this too. They say, I want that person to fall in love with me. So here are the tactics I'm going to use to get that thing to happen.
From googly eyes to whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
So with my kid, she was figuring out I was her audience. And the thing that she wanted was a cookie. Right. So first we got, can I have a cookie? No.
Nice try. Next.
Right. Can I please have a cookie? No, not right now. Then she would try another tactic like cookie. No.
Okay.
Then she'd try to go get the cookie herself. Right. And try to start pulling a stool over. Right. She did all these different tactics. And I would just watch her doing this, cracking up because I was like, girl, you don't know who you're talking to. I got your number.
I'm not new to this. Thank you very much.
This is my zone, man. You are in my world now, girl. But I'd be like, oh, but this is so fascinating because this is what we all do. We have
we actually just know how to do this. We don't have to learn it. We just know.
Right. Instinct. Like with so many things, we know things as children that we then unlearn or forget as adults.
It's kind of like getting trained out of us while we go through certain schools or academia, certain things will definitely. Yeah.
Right. And or polite behavior wouldn't be appropriate for me to just yell at somebody, cookie. But
although I'm really tempted to do that sometimes.
You should. So I think, when I give that example, people, it's clear. It's like, right. Yes. Okay. So what are these different tactics that we can put into place that get me that achieve my goal, whatever my goal is. But if we don't know who we're talking to and we don't know what our goal is, then our message is always going to fall flat. It's just not going to be specific enough. It's not going to be pointed. It's not going to be clear. I
hear the devil's advocate argument forming. Okay, so how this makes total sense if we talking in a meeting and we know our boss, we know our coworkers, we know them, that's fine. But now we're going to do the bloody TED Talk. And how am I supposed to know that audience?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked this question.
I know. I was it's on a silver tablet. I just have to go grab it.
Thank you. Okay. So here's the thing. The answer to the actual factual answer to your question is you don't know. You don't know.
Sure.
Right? Okay.
Yes. My mind gets behind that.
Yeah. You don't know. Here's what you do know. You can find out a certain set of factual information about the people who are going to be there, right? Mm-hmm. You know how many people are going to be there, most likely. You generally can find out the demographic or the average demographic of the people who are going to be there by finding out from past TED Talks at that same venue, talking to the conference presenter, whatever it is. So there's two kind of ways that you can approach this, and generally you can also kind of do both of them. One is to really actually dig and try to find out who is actually going to be in that room.
Mm.
If you happen to know somebody who's going to be there that day, you can decide, and I'll explain why this works, that person is your audience. Just that one person.
Yeah.
Let's call her Jennifer. Oh, wait, no, we can't do that because you're Jennifer. Let's call her like, Sarah.
Okay,
me?
sure.
So Jennifer, you're talking. That's so funny. So you're the person speaking. You're going to do a TED Talk. You know your friend Samantha's going to be in the audience.
I talk to myself all the time anyway, so that
perfect
example works.
Perfect. So you can decide, okay, Samantha is going to be in the audience. This talk is for her. Now, what if you don't know anybody and you don't have Samantha and you can't get all this information? You are going to invent a character who is your audience. You're going to get as specific as you possibly can about who that person is. This is a 45-year-old woman. She has, this kind of employment. This is her hopes and dreams. This is her family situation. Today, she was coming here and she was taking the bus and the bus broke down. And so she's rushed, and you can get as specific as you want with who that character is.
So you're building the whole story. For
and
himself.
this is what, if you ever see an actor doing a monologue, so in which they're talking to, it's just them on stage, but they're talking to a character who's not there. They have to do that work. They've got to invent what the other character looks like, sounds like, is behaving,
or how they move,
exactly
on the stage. So they kind of react.
Yep.
Oh,
yeah. And so it's rare that you'll see that kind of thing, but let's say you've got a character who's talking to a ghost, or, talking to somebody on the phone. This happens all the time, right? They're on the phone. There's actually nobody on the other side of the phone, but they've got to create the whole relationship. They've got to create the whole relationship with that other character. And so their homework, and the work of the speaker as well, is to create that character who literally asks the question, who am I talking to? Now, what happens because you've asked that specific question is that your language by default gets clearer and clearer and clearer. Because, for example, the way that you are going to talk to, let's say, the woman we just described that you've invented, Samantha, versus a room full of 70-year-old VC, venture capital funding people, it's very different, right? And what you want those people to do because of your message will also dictate your energy, your presentation style, the words that you use. Now, it could be, and I think this is an important distinction. You might say, my goal is the same. My goal is I want Samantha to buy my product. My goal is I want these, this room full of venture capital dudes to buy my product. Same goal, different audiences, different tactics.
Yeah.
Different.
Same goal, but different audience, demand different tactics. Right. Otherwise, you're just kind of yelling at the wall.
Yeah. And so you can see it, I think, in TED Talks. It's a great example, and it's a really helpful tool to kind of just go through YouTube and pick, 5 random TED Talks. You don't even have to watch the whole thing. Watch the first 3 minutes. You'll be able to tell, even if you don't, if you're conscientiously looking for it, you'll see right away if the person talking has figured out who they're talking to or not. And usually when they don't, you're like, kind of falls flat. I don't feel that connected to it. It's a little bit boring. Even if the topic is interesting.
Is that something what we kind of just generalize as charisma as well?
Yes. Well, charisma, I think, is something that you can learn and hone. But what you'll find, I think, energy wise, is that when somebody is just speaking kind of generally to whoever, often what will happen is their energetic reach will kind of stop at the edge of the stage, or even on a Zoom room, it'll sort of just stop. You won't feel like they're reaching through to connect with you or with their audience. They're just more focused on what I call the first two circles of speaking, which is myself and what I'm saying. And then they don't get to that third circle, which is who am I talking to?
Okay, so they're basically all way too self-involved as usual.
100%. But the good news is when we start realizing that that we're putting more focus on the other people than ourselves, a lot of the nerves, so circling back to your first question, a lot of the nerves will go away.
Makes sense,
because we're focusing, our brains can't actually focus entirely on ourselves and entirely on somebody else at the same time. We just can't do it. Yeah. So if we focus more on the other person, then we're suddenly like, oh, I'm talking to you. I care about what you're going through, what's landing for you. And then I get out of my own way.
Yeah. I get less obsessed with my bullshit and focus more on what's going on in front of me. Yes, this is very true. I love this example. This is very true. And this goes for like all areas of life and business and wherever. The more you focus on what's going on around you, the less caught up in your own shit you get.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. So we kind of learned that, okay, if I want people to listen, I have to find a way to kind of like get their attention, to kind of like speak so they can hear me. I have to know who they are so I can actually know what kind of works for them. If they're venture capitalists or stay-at-home moms, kind of like what are their things. So follow-up question there, before I want to know how I can learn charisma, is like how much that I remember when back in corporate, that balancing act of authenticity and professionalism, right? Or how much do I want to be for the other person? Yep. And how much do I be myself? For example, like how can we balance being authentic with the need to conform to like certain professional norms in leadership roles or public speaking? I don't know, when you're in like a Fortune 500 company, there's a certain way you're expected to talk. That's why I was a bad fit in corporate. Whereas at the same time, it's always kind of like, how much should I, how to balance?
Yes. It's a really important question. And I think that's a challenging question as well, because a lot of times what you're talking about is corporate culture, and we can only control what we do inside of a certain circumstance, right? We don't actually have control over the other people in the room. Similarly, however hundreds of plays I've directed, I don't have control whether the audience gives me a standing ovation at the end or not. I can just do my part, right? Yeah. So if I'm honest, if somebody is feeling like I cannot be me inside of this institution, then that's a mismatch, right?
Yeah.
And
agreed.
That just is a bummer. And that's where we are.
If you can, go look for another job.
Right. Exactly. I mean, which I understand, like that's a privilege and it's not always possible, but
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. But I will say a couple of things that are helpful. So one of the things that I think can be a super, super useful thing to remember is that within the phrase I always say is, within structure, there is freedom. So I don't mean a bad corporate fit culture structure. What I mean is within that, the world of having a lot of tools, having a lot of practice, having a lot of skills, you then can find places where your confidence and your authenticity can come forward and feel better to you. So this is why I always say to people, we've got to dig into what is your particular challenge, your unique challenge, because a lot of people, again, this kind of generalized, I'm afraid of public speaking. Well, what does that really mean? Do you not know how to use your voice? Do you not know how to ground your feet? Do you have a lot of filler words like and and what is it?
I feel personally attacked now.
But here's the thing. Actually, I don't think that's necessarily a problem to have filler words. I really don't. I think that you can speak authentically and have, all those things. But if they are happening because you don't know what you're saying next, or you're nervous, or you're questioning your worth of being in that room, then that's when we want to work on those things. If they're just part of your personality and it's part of how you lead, fine. We don't need to take that out of the mix. But if it's because I don't know where I'm going with my next sentence and I'm getting lost in my language, then that's something that we can work on. So what I will often say to people is, okay, look, if you don't have to memorize a script before you're going to talk, even if you're giving a long presentation, as long as you know what your key points are and where you're headed next, you'll be able to stay on track. Whether somebody drops a tray of coffee cups in the back corner, or an airplane flies overhead, or somebody slams a door, doesn't matter. You'll be able to go to your next point because you know where you're headed. You've done that homework in advance.
Okay, so it's kind of like have a rough roadmap of, okay, this is where I'm going, but I don't know kind of like what happens along the way. I just know
I always give this example. I always give this example that, if I'm going to drive from San Francisco to New York, from the West Coast to the East Coast, and I'm going to stop in Denver and Chicago on the way, I know that I have to get to Denver next. I live on the West Coast. I know I have to get to Denver next. I could go north a little bit, south a little bit, backtrack a little bit, stop for a day or two, but eventually I'm going to get to Denver. So if you think of Denver as your next speaking point, it's okay if you get a little wrapped up in an interesting story, right?
Like the Scenic Route.
Exactly. How about that? But you know where you're headed, right?
Okay.
So
you have two major kind of like homeworks: is A, figuring out who you're talking to, and B, what you're actually like want to talk about.
Yeah, just giving yourself some structure, because I think within that structure, if you have the speaking skills, you know how to breathe properly, you know how to warm up your breath and body and voice, you know how to ground your feet, you know how to take up space energetically in the room. These are all skills that you can learn and practice. When you know how to do that stuff, and you add the next layer, which is the thing that I'm saying, you have a pretty solid grasp on an outline of what you're going to say, then you have a lot more freedom within that to show up authentically and share your personality with the room, which was your question. And so what I find happens for so many people is they worry too much about one of those three, as I said, those three circles, and they don't think enough about the other stuff. So they'll either only think about the people out there who are judging me, or they'll only think about their content, or they'll only think about how to hold a microphone, or, themselves. Right.
Or to breathe, or
and so
really like a tiny cog in the entire machine. And
generally, so their brains then obsess over that one thing and they miss the other pieces. Then they're less agile. They're less human. They're less able to just sort of respond appropriately to what's happening in the room. Really actually what's going on right then, right there.
Be more present and really kind of like, okay, what's going on in all kind of like senses and all spaces around me.
Yeah. And I think too, that question about, culture, if you are working in a culture, for example, I think this is a really easy one to talk about. If you're working in a culture where swearing is not, generally appreciated, right? Or it's sort of frowned upon, then you get to decide, am I using swearing anyway? But if you do, you need to be thoughtful. Okay, am I using this to make a point? Am I using this to show my personality? Am I using this to get the other person to do something or not do something, right? So you can still use the language that you want to use, but you have to be thoughtful about your audience and who's receiving it. Is that going to get you what you want or not? right? So there's a difference in what I'm talking about, which is a more performative or presentational setting than just like generally, is this the right place for me to work, right? Which is a kind of a different question. Because even when you want to show up authentically and try to be yourself, if you are the person who is presenting and there is other people watching you, there is, by just sheer fact of the way that our brains work, there is an othering, a little bit of a difference between you and the people listening. And so there is a presentationalism that you can try to get as that wall as thin as you possibly can and be a person. But unless you know those people really, really well, and you've been doing this a lot, you're probably going to have some version of feeling like, okay, this is the time in which I'm presenting. It's not necessarily just me talking like I would normally talk. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question on this, which I kind of let me think how to articulate. It goes into what we said. Okay, we kind of like looking into how much of ourselves we're bringing in, or and it's like, and we've all know that person who tried to talk like Gen Z, and it's like cringe, right? But they're doing this, or often they're doing this. Well, either let's say impress, but if you're more conscious about it, you're doing it to create rapport, to kind of like, hey, I build bridges, and I know from myself when I talk in different languages, I have different tonalities. I have different speeds depending on who I talk to. I also switch accents, which drives my partner crazy, but it's not necessarily something I can often control. So how do we, what is kind of like the intersection between like creating rapport, still being ourselves, and like, is there something, if we build too much rapport, trying to sound too much like them, that this presentation mode gets too disrupted, too fizzled out, and we're not seen as leader anymore? Like what's your kind of like take on this?
That's really a nuanced question.
Not sorry.
No, it's great. It's great. So I think a couple things. So when I say the kind of language that you're going to use changes depending on who's in the room, I don't necessarily mean that if you're talking to, I'm 41, that if I was to go in and give a presentation for high school students, I would try to talk like I was in high school. That's actually not effective generally, because like you said, the kids will just call bullshit on me, right? And likewise, I simultaneously am not going to walk into a room with a 72-year-old attorney and try to talk like I'm a 72-year-old lawyer, right? What I do mean is the energy that I bring into the space might shift depending on who I'm talking to. So I notice for myself, when I go into rooms with high school students, even if they're really chill, my energy tends to amp up. I'm a lot more animated. I'm a lot more present, forward-facing energy. I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm engaging. I'm giving examples that are more relevant to them, right? So I'm not saying like I'm only going to reference 90s TV shows, right? Because those are the TV shows I watched when they were their age. I'm still going to find relevant examples and ways of talking, data points that make sense to them. When I go into the other room, for example, the 70-something-year-old lawyer, I might be a little bit more grounded, a little bit more reserved, a little bit more thoughtful or slow in my speech. Neither of those is inauthentically me. They're both me. It's just the part of me that I'm using as my tactic in that moment. Right.
Yeah.
So the way I prepare to go into those rooms is really different too, The way I prepare to go into a room, the high school student room, is I will probably listen to some loud, fun music.
Mm.
The way I prepare to go into the room with the other dude is I'll probably take 5 minutes to sit quietly, to ground my feet. You know, when people talk about, they talk about in psychology, this idea of mirroring or mirror neurons,
Yes.
right? Where if you see somebody and they're sitting in a certain way and you want them to feel comfortable,
Yes.
you might mirror.
So you also
the way
cross
that
your
they're
legs
sitting.
or.
Right. 58% of how people perceive our message is through nonverbal communication. So
okay. So the power of body language.
Huge, right? Something we miss. We don't talk about it a lot because we're always talking about the content, the words, right? But the way that we're communicating, the sound of our voice, the energy, the body language is really different depending on who it is that we want to receive our message. So again, I have a high energy side of me. I have a mid and low energy side of me. I can tap into those different parts of me, still feel like I'm me, but I'm thinking more about how they need to receive my message, right?
Yes, which makes sense. Yes. Okay. One more follow-up question before we come to charisma, because we got to cover this. I want to know. This might, again, I'm drawing this from my own experience, and I hope some of you think this, oh yes, I actually can relate. You said like you bring your all the parts are you, which I think is such a beautiful point because it's so true. We're more than just one side. We're all of these dimensions and nuances. And I would say I am very empathic. Like I really look with how the other people's are doing. So what would happen to me if I bring my high strong energy and someone else like on a call would also bring their high energy? It could really go sideways because we're like hyping each other up and there's no like calming presence. So how can we catch ourselves in that? And I mean, that's not just with that. I mean, we all know like we're feeling good and then Debbie Downer comes into the room and we feel like crap. Right.
Yes.
And we're like, moping around. Like this works all the ways. Or someone is angry and then you're kind of like, oh, actually, I'm not really angry. That's not my energy. Like how, if we're in the middle of a conversation or like, how can we kind of like break this?
So another super smart, interesting, and nuanced question. So
this is my trademark.
Yeah. So my coaching on this has to do with how you prepare. And I talk to folks all the time about creating their own energy barrier or energy boundary before they start speaking. So this is really helpful. It's really helpful for empaths, and I am one too. It's also very helpful for introverts who need to go into a public speaking space or networking or whatever, where they're going to feel drained by interactions. I will literally, and it depends on the person and what works for them. But one example that I use is envisioning however much energy you need, however much boundary. I try to avoid the word barrier because it sounds
kind of like bouncing space, right? I see Dirty Dancing. This is my dancing space.
Yes. How much personal space do you need, right? And it's going to change day to day where you are in your cycle, where you are in your mood, what time of day it is, right? Some days I need 3 to 70 feet on any side of me of people away. Some days it's like, come on in. I got the capacity, right? You've got to become present with your own self and put up whatever. And I have a ton of different visualizations. One of the things that I really like is for myself is, I'll imagine a plexiglass sphere kind of all around me. So I can see out, they can see in, I can hear you in and out. And then I imagine somebody's energy coming towards that plexiglass and they can come barreling towards it, but they They'll just hit the glass and bounce right off.
Oh, I like this image. Yes.
So they can't come in. So I can respond to them. But I'm still me. I'm still present. I'm still grounded. Right. So I will notice, and I do the same thing, that if somebody's got really high energy and I'm talking to them and then I have higher energy, we go back and forth. There's actually nothing wrong with that if that's how the flow is going. But if you know, so this is where we kind of knit all these pieces together. If you know that in that conversation, you need to get to a certain point, then you need to have your personal boundary set up, your structure of where am I headed? What is my goal here? So that you can catch yourself in those moments. And maybe it's as simple as just pausing. I think the power of the pause is amazing. You just stop talking for a second. Take a deep breath. Exhale.
Continue.
Where are my feet? Oh, there are my feet. Okay. And then let's go. Right. So, yeah. So I think that we've got to do that work in advance.
Okay.
And I really, people don't think about doing this people don't think about warming up when they're going to do a Zoom conversation or a podcast. They don't think about warming up when they're going to just
I've never warmed up my voice. This is very true.
Really?
No. No. How, what would you do?
Well, I'm going to gift you my how to create a personalized public speaking warm up. I'll send it to you when we're done. But I do have a course. It's a short, it's like 30 minutes, super easy to consume. Lesson on how to warm up your breath, your body, your voice to get ready to do speaking, because we have a whole instrument here. This is our instrument. If we were trumpet players in the symphony, we would warm up before any performance. It's the exact same thing. And that mindset, even just taking 5 minutes to downregulate your nervous system can be the thing that changes the game for your speaking experience. So, yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Remember, you'll remember, Adriana, right before we pressed record, I told Adriana that I really like to do these conversations in the evening because that's where I feel like most chatty. Maybe that's just when I'm most warmed up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay. This is okay. I love this. Yes. So we got a lot of homework. And I love that it's not just, but it's so helpful, right? And always with a bloody mindset, but it's so true, right? Like we gotta have to kind of figure out how we protect our space. And that goes in any kind of conversation. It's not just a TED Talk. It's you talking to your kid, you talking to your spouse, you talking to your boss, you talking, I don't know, on Instagram Live, right?
Yes. Or even just an Instagram Reel, anytime that you're putting yourself out there. And the more we do this kind of thing, you get a shorthand, you figure out what works for you, right? Yeah. Like it doesn't have to be a massive 25-minute project every time you're going to do it. You could have a thing where you say, okay, I'm going to do one breath of square breathing where I inhale, hold, exhale, hold, each for a count of 4. And that is my nervous system, mental, emotional, spiritual reminder of all this other prep work I've already done. It could be just as simple as that. It doesn't have to be massive or hard, right? And actors do this over time. They figure it, every single actor worth their salt warms up before they go out on stage, even if they've done the play 100 to 200 to 800 times before. They always warm up. And part of what they do is they figure out over the course of their career what kind of warm up they need. And for different characters, they might need different things, right? It's the same thing that we've talked about.
Yes, makes sense. Okay, which brings me, I feel this is kind of like the golden ticket jackpot question. You said before, you can actually learn charisma. So I'm like, okay, spill, sister. Because I'm sure, I don't know, one of the things, we all want to be more happier, more fulfilled, more joyful, and we all want to have more charisma. I think that's something, I don't know. I've never met anyone who's like, nah, I'm actually, and don't want it.
Oh, charisma. And it's part of the tagline of my business, is charismatic speaking. Here's the thing. There are some people who are naturally charismatic, right? We know who these people are. So
Yes.
mostly they're actors, they're politicians, right? That's where we see them in the public sphere. But we see people too who have a magnetism.
Well, we all had that person in class who was just kind of like getting every way with the teacher because he just had their way, right? Like just knew how to.
Right. And sometimes it's just an energy. It's just who that person is. But more interestingly, I think, is what do we perceive as charismatic? So I actually am curious for you. When you say we all want to have more charisma, what does that mean for you?
Like having charisma or being charismatic. For me, it's an allure of interest, of like interest. Oh, this is interesting. This person is interesting. It's something that's kind of stops me in my tracks. It's something unique and something maybe a bit out of place. It's just right. It's not your standard, I don't know, standard beautiful voice or something. It's something's catching. Something's catching me.
Yes. And I'm guessing you've experienced this in many circumstances that had nothing to do with public speaking.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Right. So I love that you used the word unique and said, there's something special about this person that makes me lean in. Without trying to sound like it's all rainbows, unicorns, and sparkles up in here, I do happen to believe that each person on the planet is a unique individual, right? I have never looked at a person walking down the street and been like, God, just kind of general.
Such a basic bitch. Well, I mean, yes. Although we all sometimes call ourselves basic bitch because we have like those Stanley cups and we really do feel like basic bitches. But yes.
But you are nothing like if I lined you and all your friends up, even if you were holding the same cup and wearing the same clothes, I would be able to tell you apart, right? So absolutely. Part of why I think that charisma can be learned or can be revealed, I think is maybe the better word, is all this other boring shit I've already talked about, which is all this practice, this homework, this structure, right? And this goes back to your very first question, like, how did I come into this? Because of being a theater director, I've spent my career, sometimes I've directed the same play with different casts of people, right? So same script, same structure, same beginning, middle, and end. And some productions work better than others, or some actors hit more than others. Why is that, right? So what you have to figure out is, once you do all of this homework, the thing that is left is you. It's your unique voice. It's what makes you tick. So if you can get all that other stuff organized, dialed in, and then the best part is, then you let it go.
Okay, then you forget all about it because you have already kind of like intrinsically, your body knows what to do. Your body knows 100%. How to ground itself. Your body knows how to breathe.
This is why, So when I directed Romeo and Juliet, right? Everybody knows these speeches in these scenes, or they're familiar with it enough, right? So the actor playing Juliet, she memorizes her lines. She knows her blocking. She knows her staging. She knows her why. And then what you're watching is a person living in real time in front of you, being truthful. And we lean into that. And that, I think, is what we're actually looking for when we're talking about truthfulness. Is vulnerability, is present, centered, showing up as you are. You don't have to be the prettiest person in the room. You don't have to be the funniest person in the room. You said something's a little out of place. It's like, what's going on there, right? Makes us lean in and ask questions, right?
Yeah.
But we can't.
When I'm intrigued to feel curious, when I'm intrigued to ask questions, that's when my interest peaks. I mean, that's personally for me, but then I'm like, yeah, wait a minute.
Right. But I actually think people tend to try to do this work backwards.
Oh,
where they just, the other stuff can feel kind of boring. It's like, you're telling me that to get to charisma, I need to like
center ground my feet,
like learn where to stand and like all this stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, because what's blocking you from showing up authentically as you and being charismatic, being unique, even if you're, again, you didn't say what, that's why I like to ask the question. You didn't say they sound like, they sound like Meryl Streep, or they've got the best speaking voice ever, or they're so pretty. You said there's something unique about them that makes you lean in.
Yeah.
That's just a person being authentically a person in the world.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is we have to create enough structure so that you can then forget about the structure and then show up as you.
I love this. Oh God. Yes, absolutely. So, wow. Okay. I think we've covered so much ground in this conversation. Like, for anyone going new to the conversation, who've never really thought about it up until like how to really like, you've done all that, then what? Like, how can you still like continue to grow? Like, as in your public voice, in your public speaking. So the more you can continue to grow, the more you become yourself. This is beautiful. I love this. Right. And it just applies to everything, right? The more, maybe really we could see it as the structures that help us to become more of ourselves, right? Because they give us enough, structure, but also that the freedom that comes with it, right? To kind of like, oh, okay, I know this helps me, and then I can go on and actually do epic shit. I love this. Oh, okay. This is very good. So if people are now, Adriana, if they're like, oh, okay, this sounds interesting, I gotta learn more, whether is that I have no idea how I should ground myself, or like where my feet are. How can people work with you? How can people find you online? Tell us.
My website is claimcenterstage.com, and that is the hub for all the things. So if you want to answer the question, how do I stop using filler words or all of those things, I have a whole bunch of very short tutorials that you can access through that page, as well as coaching and courses and one-on-one opportunities. If you're an Instagram person, that's where I post a lot of tutorials. You can look in the Reels section. There's a ton of free content there, but primarily it's all through claimcenterstage.com.
Perfect. And you also brought something with you for everyone listening. It's called Get Grounded. Do you want to quickly tell me something about it?
Yes. So that is a free download for you, and it is a 5-minute meditation. On this word we've used a bunch of times on how to get grounded before you speak. So you can go to my website, click on free tools, and you'll find that meditation. You can download it and try it out and let me know what you think.
Perfect. That I will. Before I let you off, what book are you currently reading?
Oh, yeah. I just
started. Audiobook. I mean, both are fine.
I just started a book called The Creative Act, A Way of Being. It's by Rick Rubin. And I've just delved into it, but it's this really beautiful look at how to sort of see the whole world as inspiration for art making, or how to see yourself as an artist, even if you're not, painting stuff.
I love this.
So, yes.
This is definitely going to go on the Scenic Route book list recommendation. That sounds like a keeper.
Yeah.
Adriana, well, thank you so much for taking the Scenic Route with me. It was a pleasure to have you.
It was so fun. Thank you so much.
And just like that, we've reached the end of another journey together on the Scenic Route podcast. Thank you for spending time with us. Curious for more stories or in search of the resources mentioned in today's episode? Visit us at scenicroutepodcast.com for everything you need. And if you're ready to embrace your scenic route, I've got something special for you. Step off the beaten path with my Scenic Route affirmation card deck. It's crafted for those moments when you're seeking courage, yearning to trust your inner voice, and eager to carve out a path authentically, unmistakably yours. Pick your Scenic Route affirmation today and let it support you. Excited about where your journey might lead? I certainly am. Remember, the Scenic Route is not just about the destination, but the experiences, learnings, and joy we discover along the way. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you on the Scenic Route again.